Something. I just want to, now that we've
there we go.
we have, there is such a custom. There is such a custom that when you learn a mimer, you should learn the mimer 60 times.
Wow.
And in certain yeshivas that are even Baltruvi yeshivas, etc., this is the seder. You learn a mimer, you learn it again, you learn it again, you learn it again, you learn it again. Because the more you learn a mimer, we don't really understand like the depths that are inside the mimer. You could read something casually. The more you internal, and even if you basically know the idea is that it becomes one with you. It becomes part of your conversation. Like it's deeply ingrained. So if you look at any of the Maimarim, for example, of the Rebbe, there was a condition that the Friedrich Rebbe put on his courters to marry his daughters. Imagine you're a Rebbe. What kind of limitations are you going to put on who's your son-in-law going to be? So besides the fact you had to know like all of Shas and Poskim, etc., each one who was going to try and marry the daughter of the Friedrich Rebbe had to know 10,000 Maimarim Baal Peh.
Whoa.
That was one of the conditions.
What do you mean?
Kacha, that's the Shmua Shashmati. So in other words, but also if you look at any one of the Rebbe's Maimarim, if you look at them, you learn how to learn a Maimer by learning the Rebbe's Maimarim. Why? Because every one of the Rebbe's Maimarim, for example, this one, and like every other one we're ever going to learn, they're based on another Maimer, right? If you look at the top line, he says, we're going to explain this based on what it says in Likutei Torah with the same title. And the idea is that the Rebbe is going to go into that mimer and tear it to pieces in such a way that he's going to find mamish chidushei Torah inside of the Alter Rebbe's words, which you're going to be so clear after the fact that he finds them that they were there already, because there's no way that they weren't, because he shows you like mamish word by word how exactly that's what the Alter Rebbe was saying. To do that, you have to go into the mimer so deeply that you know mamish inside it, but besides Baal Peh, right? Of course you know it Baal Peh. Of course you could rattle it off, but that's already level one, right? So all I'm saying is this is a mimer that is learned and learned again, but we're going to learn it yet again. So l'chaim. Don't be forlorn, my friends. Whatever.
We want way to prove you.
So this is like a famous mimer that's set a lot.
It's a classic mimer because it has some very, very. First of all, it's just geschmack. The idea is, I would say it's a level one mimer because it's more or less very easy to follow. And it also has some very foundational ideas based on Tanya, etc. What's that, David?
Did any of the Friedrich Rebbe's daughters' potential grooms ever say, I'm not learning yours, I want to say my own?
Yeah, but that happened after they became the Rebbe. Okay, so let's take it from the top. This is a mimer from Koach Sivan. Who knows what's special about you're looking for a mimer? Special about the date Koach Sivan. See, there's even mysteries sort of contained inside of the times, of course, the Rebbe said these maimarim. Of course, we're learning this mimer because Parsha Shlach is upon us soon. And we finished our Baloscha mimer early. So we're jumping in. But what happened special on the date Koach Sivan? Before we even get into the mimer, let's see how expert our experts are.
I feel like I know, but I forgot.
What is the uniqueness about the date Koach Sivan, which gives this whole mimer like a whole nother richness on a different level? Anybody know? Yehoshua? Can you mind closing the curtain just because the bathroom is over there?
A bird told me the Rebbe came to America.
Ah, a little bird told you. The Rebbe came to America on this day. Right, as the famous story goes, he literally caught the last boat out of Europe, and that was the last one that could get across before the war turned into nightmare. And the Rebbe said many, many sichas about this to explain like the significance of it, which is again kind of this self-reflection of who he was and the importance of himself. But essentially, what he said was Koach Sivan. I'm going to go into a little tangent here just because it's exciting, the date. By the way, it's 2 times the Rebbe basically emphasized the connection of Koach Sivan with this mimer, because it was said on the day Koach Sivan in 1976. And then when he actually, we've talked about this before, the Rebbe didn't print and edit every mimer that he wrote. Quite the contrary, only a small fraction of them. But this one was printed, edited, and put in the collection of edited maimarim. And then he had it printed also on Koach Sivan in 1988, which is the year that he lost his Rebbitzin. So what was the significance? He said, first of all, Koach Sivan means the Koach of the month of Sivan. What's the month of Sivan known for? Is the Indian of Matan Torah, of course, right? And so the idea that what's the function of Matan Torah? It's the kavana of Matan Torah is that the tachtonim yalu lamayla, that it should ultimately elevate the whole world. So until the Torah gets into the tachton, right, and basically permeates the lowest world, you can't really say that the Torah's giving was complete. And so the Rebbe's point was that where the Torah was given on the world stage was essentially on the Chetzi Kadur Ha'elyona, right? On the top part of the world. The world is a ball. And there's the top part of the world is basically where Eretz Yisrael is, and it's where Matan Torah was. And so basically the Jewish people received the Torah, and we wandered about the world, but only on the top part of the world. Until the Torah made its way to literally the bottom part of the globe, we can't say that the Torah permeated every single part of the world. And so the Rebbe actually said a very similar concept when his father-in-law came to America. On what date? The 9th of Adar, right? The Frierdiker Rebbe came to America. And that was also sort of like, the Rebbe spoke about this, that this was also a vast achievement that basically the Torah made it to the new world. But essentially, really, the Rebbe said that Koach Sivan was the ultimate completion. That's why it's called the Koach of Sivan, the total power of giving of the Torah, that basically Mashiach can come now because the world had been permeated from end to end. And obviously, when you lift up something to refine it, if you lift it up from the middle, like the famous analogy of the lever, when you stick if you want to lift up a house, you stick it into the middle beam, you leave the bottom unrefined, unlifted up. But if you stick it into the bottom, then you lift up the whole house. So the whole idea is that it was the intention from time immemorial, from before God created the world, the Torah should make its way to the bottom part of the world. And this is like another sign of Mashiach, by the way, that the world was completely conquered by Torah. And not only that, but once the world got the Torah into the bottom half of it, the hispashtus and the expansion of the Torah to all other parts of the world happened in a way that never happened before. Where Chabad houses all over the mamash existence and the Temimei of Torah started to shine. This only really happened when the Torah went to the bottom, because there's like the greenhouse effect, right? There's the or chozer. When you get to the bottom, it's much, much stronger. So the Rebbe said this maimer on Koach Sivan, and then he had it reprinted and also Koach Sivan. So he says, let's just read the footnote. It starts with a footnote, a little star. It says Yatz Le'or b'kuntris Koach Sivan. Right, it came out in a special kuntris Koach Sivan. Right, the Rebbe. It wasn't just he had it printed special in its own little booklet, and it said over there on the kuntris Likrat Yom Habahir Koach Sivan Habalin Latova. The Rebbe called it Yom Habahir, which is, you have to understand, there's like a lot of little secrets in here. Yom Habahir means a shiny day, a wondrous day. This is a day that they speak about, like Yud Tes Kislev is called Yom HaBahir. This is a day that Hey Tevis, he called it a Yom HaBahir. It's a title that you give to a day that like shocked and changed the world. What's so great about Koach Sivan, right? Everybody's just saying, this is the day I came to America. It's like a wondrous day. But really, you could say it was because his life was spared, but obviously the whole life of the Jewish people was also spared on that day. So it says, and so this is a quote from the title page of that kuntris, Yom Bo Nitzlu Kavod Kedush Admor Shlita. It's the day that the Rebbe and his Rebbitzin were saved, Me'emek HaBacha HaEuropa, from the hell of Europe, basically, V'yagiu Tzleicha La'artz Abris, and they reached safely and successfully to the Americas. And that what day did they reach there? Yom Beis Koach Sivan, on a Monday, Koach Sivan, in the year 1941. Sha'az hizchilu tenufa chadasha b'chazkas v'hafatzas haTorah hayahadus v'hafatzas hamayanos. The Rebbe writes this mamish plainly on the kuntris, right? He says that was the day that began a new period of strengthening and promulgating Yiddishkeit and strengthening and spreading Chassidus, the well springs. Hisyastus hamostos hamerkazim machane Yisrael, because that was the year that the new institutions called Machane Yisrael were founded, and kahas, and merkos linyani chinuch. In other words, these were all the aspects of what we now know today as basically Chabad, right? For example, they were because they were founded because the Rebbe's father-in-law gave them to him to run. So the Rebbe says this is like a new takufa in like Jewish history. That also, I don't know if they already existed, but basically they were up and coming ideas that the Frierdiker Rebbe had that he gave to his Sheberosham Amad Kavod Admor Shlita, and this is basically where the Rebbe was standing at their head. Okay, and he said this mimer on Motzi Shabbos Parshas Shlach, which was in that year Shnas Hakel, or actually he didn't say the mimer, but it was printed, which was Shnas Hakel 1988. Okay, this is our little introduction. We already learned a few new things. Okay. Vayishlach Yehoshua Shnai Manashim Ragli. This is the Haftorah of next week's Parsha, Shlach, where it says that Yehoshua sent 2 spies. And Mevar B'Lekutei Torah Divra Maskil Zeh. It's explained in Lekutei Torah with a mimer from the same words. Hachiluk bein Meraglim Sheshalach Yehoshua and Meraglim Sheshalach Moshe. What was the difference between Moshe's spies that he sent in the beginning of our Parsha and Yehoshua's spies that he sent in the next generation upon entering the land? The Meraglim Sheshalach Moshe Kasi, when Moshe sent the spies, it says, Shlach Lacha, L'daitecha ani eini matzav lecha. You send them, as you know, the famous first Rashi. Why does it say Shlach Lacha? Because basically Hashem said, according to your own opinion, I'm not commanding you. As though it was that the sending of the spies was something that was on Moshe's own initiative. Masha ein kein shiluach hameraglim. I do want to point out something that the Rebbe has a lot to say about this in Shlach. First of all, now you can see even more why, because it was connected with his own being sent to America and like a new takufa, but also this idea of Shlach Lacha. What's the whole idea of, I suddenly feel the need to connect this whole mimer to Koach Sivan, which I never really did before. But what's the idea of, we're saying Koach Sivan is that the Torah reaches to the lowest places, whereas though, what does it mean the lowest places, right? It's not just the lowest geographical place. It's like the kavanah of the Torah, which is really the Rebbe's whole shita, is that I'm not going to do this for you. Right? When the Rebbe took over the reins of Lubavitch on Yud Shvat, 1951, he came out with an announcement, I'll say my marim, we'll fabrig, we'll print books, but I'm not going to do this for you. It's all about you doing the work, which is really like an encapsulation of the theory of Chabad Chassidus, right? The Rebbes of before the Alter Rebbe, they basically did it for you. In other words, being in their presence and like sort of zapping you into a feeling of resurrection because of their holiness. The Alter Rebbe said, I'm going to put it in a book. You read the book and meet me there. Right, which means like you have to basically find it yourself, because this is really the kavanah elyona of a dir b'tachtonim. A dir b'tachtonim means the tachton has to make the dira. Not just that Hashem's going to come and put his dira in the tachtonim. Hashem did that when he put the Torah in the world on the higher hemisphere. The whole idea of the lower hemisphere is the tachtonim have to put the Torah into the world, right? So too, this is the whole idea of the Rebbe's generation. This is the idea of Mashiach, and also this is the idea of Shalach Lecha. The Rebbe speaks about this a lot, and it's a really cool concept. Shlach Lecha means, I'm not commanding you, right? Why would Moshe do it if he wasn't being commanded? Like, what Moshe just like having ideas all of a sudden? The whole thing Moshe is constantly telling the Bnei Yisrael is, I'm not doing any of this from my own. You think I'm appointing my brother Aaron because he's my brother? This is not my ideas. So all of a sudden, it's the biggest thing that comes into the whole creation. He's going to send finally the Jews to Eretz Yisrael. He's like, you know what, let me just do this on my own. Obviously, it was of the divine intention. But the whole idea is Hashem says, I'm not commanding you, is that because the whole concept of going into the land is the same idea as hitting the tachton, that what's the difference between being in the midbar and being in the land? In the midbar, Hashem gives us the water, he gives us the man, he gives us everything from above to below. In the land, you have to grow the crops. Even though Hashem's doing it for you, he wants you to do it. So even the entrance into the land from the Moshe Rabbeinu figure, he has to figure out, so to speak, on his own. The whole thing is a koach sivan vort. That's why the Rebbe is basically, saying this mimer. It's conjunction with him, with our generation and his own self. It's gewaldic. Yeah.
So basically, it's not the negative
you send them for yourself.
How can it be negative, right? It's a
Right.
portion of the Torah about Moshe Rabbeinu.
No, because usually it's the idea of like, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Right.
It's like, no, I want you
Right.
to do it.
Yes.
I don't want to have to tell you to
That's
do it.
exactly right.
Which is exactly what we were telling you in the previous Bible about Adam Rishon. I want you to sin, but I don't want to have to tell you to sin.
Whoa, bringing sin is a different measure. This is not considered a sin. In other words, it should have worked. The Yidden didn't comply exactly. They didn't really make the Dir B'Tachtonim, and obviously that was all part of the teaching effort, so that later we won't make that same mistake. Don't forget, because of this sin, Tisha B'Av, the destruction of every temple, but that's going to be a great Yom Tov one day when we finally get ourselves out of this lack of faith. But no, let's keep it positive. In other words, meaning to say that the whole kavanah was that man should bring the geula, and therefore the geula begins with the entrance to the Eretz Yisrael. Even the process of preparing for that had to, so to speak, come without God's intervention, because that would not have been a dir b'taktonim. If Hashem would have done it, He would have ruined it. I'm not commanding you. If there's a command, it means you're not doing it on your own, and that's the Rebbe wants us to figure out how to bring geula. Mamish, David, stay with us. Okay. So going back to do you have any more of these? Let's get to, here you go. Okay, so back inside. We're not getting very far. Sorry, I'm having a day here. So he says, the difference between Moshe's spies and Yeshua's spies. Okay, Moshe's spies, Shalach lecha l'daitecha ani eni mitzam lecha. I'm not commanding you. Masha enkin shiluach hameraglim Yehoshua haya lo midaito. When it comes to Yeshua's spies, it was not on his own initiative. Ela al pi tzivoy havaya. There Hashem did command him. V'od chiluk. Okay, so that's one difference. What's the next difference? Meraglim sheshlach Yehoshua hayurak liYerecho. Yeshua did not send spies to the whole land, only to the city of Jericho. Menula shel Eretz Yisrael.
Is that why Yericho is built like a labyrinth? Like in the pictures that we see, it's like always like a labyrinth.
Huh.
And like Yericho is in the middle. It's like a maze.
I've never been there.
No, if you look at pictures like paintings and stuff,
Right.
or like if you like some of these art scroll kumashim,
Yeah.
it shows Yericho like a. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've seen those pictures. I'm not sure what the concept is over there, to be honest with you.
No, but that's what they mean maybe by like a lock. It's like a maze. Like you have to.
I understand the lock of the land to be that through that you unlock the whole land.
Which is literally like a maze. Maybe they have to go through that whole maze to unlock.
Okay, let's
Or
go
maybe
for it.
what that maybe that's what like when they paint like a maze, but maybe that's what they're saying. It's like it's the lock of the land.
No, you gotta do this puzzle and then you can get the whole land.
Right.
Okay, but why is Yerecho called the lock of the land? Seemingly because through there it unlocks the entire conquest of the land. Quite literally, that's what happened, right? Yehoshua started there and unlocked the conquest from there. Okay. By going and spying out only Yerecho, that would be sort of his in to get a feeler and a taste test. And by spying out the one city, he really spied out the whole land from there. So he didn't send to the whole Eretz Yisrael, just sent to there. But through there, he got to everywhere. Whereas Moshe's spies, he sent it to the entire land, its length and its width. There's a whole story. Why do we wander around in the desert for 40 years? To counteract to pay for the 40 days that the spies of Moshe went walking around the whole land for 40 days, right? So they really checked it out. Even though it says that that's not really enough time to see the whole land, but Hashem sort of made a miracle. And again, there was blessings even in their mistakes, so that they would be limited in their punishment afterwards. So he made them kind of go quickly through the land, even though they did spy out the whole thing. Base. What's the point of all this? The commandment to conquer the land spiritually. Like everything in Torah, this is an eternal commandment which is actually relevant at all times. In other words, even though you could say that this is something that happened a long time ago, if it's in the Torah, it is an eternal lesson, as we know. He says in footnote 7 that Vadai Pashut Shebechinis Nesin Tza'aretz L'Yisrael. It's obvious, right? The Mittler Rebbe says it's obvious that the giving of the land to the Jewish people Yeshno gam ata baruchnis. It's also now spiritually. In other words, the Jews lived in Poland and who knows where for all generations. The whole concept of the Jewish people entering the land, which was not on their fingertips to do practically, obviously that's a huge aspect of our avodas Hashem in every day, is that we're trying to sort of conquer our spiritual land. This is the whole goal of having the Torah. So even though we can't conquer the physical land, there's the notion of conquering our spiritual land, which we'll soon understand what that is. Certainly. The kol echad ve'echad Yisrael tzrich lichbosh kol kochos ve'inyanim the guf of a nafsho bahamis. And what is the idea of the spiritual land? Every Jew has the obligation to conquer his kochos, his powers, right, and all the matters of his body and his animal soul, which is called his Eretz Canaan, right? So basically, your Goyish land, which is really destined to one day be conquered and turned into Jewish land. You have an obligation to conquer it. Lasosam kelim elokus. You have to make everything you have vessels to godliness. You have to make it into Eretz Yisrael. Right? It's an amazing, really fundamental concept. That really, this is the whole Torah is a story about this people coming out of Egypt, going through the desert to try to get the land of Israel, and that's really the whole story of our lives, right? The land of Israel, as we're going to soon see, is the nations of Canaan. These are your different parts and powers, and the whole idea is that your godly soul, which is Yaakov and his sons, coming through to basically conquer that land for God. He says here in footnote 8 that Hamilchama shel nefesh elokis v'nefesh bahamis, your war that you're waging with your godly soul and your animal soul, right? Al guf v'kol evarav, basically on your body and all of your limbs. You're trying to dominate your body and your limbs. It's an example of the war of the two kings that are trying to take over a city, right? This is the Alter Rebbe's explanation in Tanya. Shekol echad rotzeh chavsha. Every one of them wants to take over the whole thing, right? So if you have two kings on a city, they're not going to just sit there and sort of share it, right? Each one wants to dominate the whole thing. And so it is with your body and your limbs. So he says, what's the difference between Yericho, the city of Jericho, and the whole land, right? In terms of our spiritual avoda? The Yerecho Gimel Halavushim Machshava Dibur Maisa. The Yerecho represents the three garments of the soul: thought, speech, and action. Why? Where do we get this from? Yerecho Melashon Reach, because Yerecho comes to the word scent. Levushim Shaychim LeReach, and your garments are connected with scent, which is hinted to in the Zohar, but it says Berecha Levushaychu, that the story of Esav and his coat. Right, the hairy coat that Yaakov wound up putting on when he came into Yitzchak. Right, basically, it's like he had the scent of the garments. Right, but also we know this idea that there's the scent of the garments, that Yaakov could had the scent of Gan Eden upon him. Right, because a person sort of brings around with him the scent of his good deeds, which is his thought, speech, and action. So we see that there's a connection between your garments and the scent. But obviously, that's just like from a practical story. In other words, there happened to be a line in the Torah which connects garments to scent. So we can make sort of like he says, a remez, a hint that there's a connection between them. But philosophically speaking, more psychologically speaking, what is the connection to scent and garment? Yehoshua? What's the connection to scent and garment? We have to tear the mimer apart. Learn it 60 times. Let's try and understand. We read it. What is it? You're memorizing it right now. What is the connection? What is it? What does it mean? Okay, you can point to a pasuk. You can point to a pasuk. But in other words, why though? Right? It's just because it says the smell of your garments. I can say the smell of a potato. Suddenly, the potato and smell has a connection that permanently, eternally, to the point of the city of Jericho, we can say is thought, speech, and action. What's connected with the scent?
Smell bad, you wouldn't wear it. So you only wear something that smells good. So If it's dirty,
Yaakov were the stinky garments of Esav, though. Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of two, they're both used for
yeah, but
concealment.
he's elevating the dirt.
Any idea? Yeah, but you know this one.
Did you just say it? And didn't you just say it like a minute ago?
What?
And when you're doing good deeds, you have the scent of like that aura of like people smell around you.
Okay. The thing about scent, this is the way I understand it. The thing about scent is that it's not the difference between scent and eating the actual food is that you don't get the thing itself, right? You get like a waft of it. I would call it almost like an exhaust, right? It's something that's not the thing itself, but it comes off of it. That's why actually it says you can't make a birchas hanenin on a scent because the body doesn't have any benefit from it. Only the soul has a benefit from it. It's because it's not a gush. It's not the thing itself. So too, how is that connected with thought, speech, and action? Because you have your actual spheros, which is like your soul powers, which is likened to a body, right? And these things that come off of your body are like exhaust, right? When you produce speech or action, which means like you throw a ball and your power of your body is now inside the ball, that's what's carrying the ball against gravity in the air. So you can we have like superpowers, right? You can shoot stuff out of you, whether it be words or actions and even thought, really. It doesn't leave you, but we learn something deep about the fact that thought is also a garment. It's not really part of you. Like you said, you could just change your thoughts. You could put on new ones. Because you can't do that to your arm, right? You can't sort of like shoot your arm off and you can't say that you can trade your arm for another one because it's essential to you. So scent is like this idea that it's like a step removed from the thing itself. And that's why it's connected spiritually with the idea of garments. Everyone understand that?
Yeah, there's also the idea that you can, the way you can kind of damage the soul with the physical, like the garments. Because, isn't there stuff in Gemara, right, about like pregnant women smelling stray food and stuff, and that sort of doing spiritual damage to the child? It's sort of like there's, I don't know, it's similar.
During Havdalah.
Yeah, but it's because your soul is in pain, right? Not because your body. In other words, I didn't say you don't make a bracha on scent, but you can't make a blessing like a birchas hanenin that your body benefited from it. It's a benefit from the soul. Your body has no benefit from smell because it's disconnected, it's disassociated from the body, just like scent is disassociated from the food itself. So too the garments are somewhat disassociated from your body itself,
Hence
right?
what you smell, Rabbi.
What's that?
Hence what you smell.
Okay, so that makes sense now. We see why Yerecho, which means scent, is associated with the garments. Besides this remez inside of the Zohar, which connects the scent to the actual garment that's had a scent. Okay, so that's Yerecho. It's connected with the thought, speech, and action. Klalos ha'aretz, the rest of the land, Eretz Zayin Amamin, the land of the 7 nations, Hamido Shabbat. That's the actual you. That's your body, right? It's not the garments. It's the actual you. And why are there 7 nations of Canaan? Why are there 7 Dafka nations of Canaan? Because there's 7 midos. Each one of the nations of Canaan is associated with one of your evil midos, right? So you have your chesed can go wildly wrong and need to be like sort of conquered or destroyed. Your gevurah, etc. So this is really like your body. This is like the real you. It's not why, therefore, it's not called scent. It's the actual land itself.
I think during this Torah, there's a practice instead of relating to the spirit of every day, you relate to the kings of Canaan.
Yeah. How many kings of Canaan were there?
Oh, 7?
I guess depends how you look at it. There's 31, but whatever. I don't know exactly. That's interesting. The point being here is what? That I was going to say something. I forgot. Oh, how many kochos do you have, though? You have only 7 spheros inside?
No, you have 10 kochos.
So why is there only 7 nations of Canaan? Say it again? 3 we haven't conquered yet. Which is what? Right, but what are the lands? Keni, Kenizi, Vikadmoni. and they're going to be obligated in the times of Mashiach. I'm giving you a little hint to our afternoon class coming in. We're going to make a reference there soon. But the idea is that ultimately there are 7 midos, and this is what we're busy trying to conquer over here, the lands of Canaan. But ultimately, we're going to get to the 3 which are called Chabad, right? In other words, the Chocham, Bin, and Das are also going to be actual physical lands that we're conquering. But as it turns out, we don't conquer those until we get to stage 2 of our conquest of the land, which B'ezrat Hashem we're in right now. It looks like there's talk about us just taking all to Beirut and maybe even Tehran. Let's see what happens. What's that?
What are those 3 lands today?
So it's Edom, Moab, and Ammon,
Edom is,
south of Eretz Israel.
East of the Jordan.
East of the Jordan, pretty far out there. Yeah, and
Egypt,
pretty well north.
Sinai Peninsula, Jordan.
Not the whole peninsula, but a good aspect of it. I don't know, you have to look at maps. There's different also versions of the boundaries of the lands.
We never had control.
We had for a minute, we gave it back.
Oh, really? No, I'm talking about like biblically.
Biblically, no. Okay, so we have the 7 nations. That's the actual land. That's why the commandment that came to Yeshua, the commandment because Moshe was not commanded. The commandment to Yehoshua to send the spies, it was only to Yerecho, only to, so to speak, the scent, the garments. Because your thought, speech, and action are in your possession. Like it says in the Tanya, you are responsible for them. You're not necessarily responsible for the deeper issues with your lacking of your person because you're born that way. Your 7 midos is kind of like your actual body. So in other words, you can't do anything about being tall or too short. You can't do anything about having blue eyes or green eyes. Or if you're going to do something, it's almost a serious surgery. Like in other words, it's not like in your possession to just do. But your clothes, you can put them off, take them on. You can change whatever clothes you want. This is the basis, one of the basic fundamental ideas of Tanya, that you are in control of your thought, speech, and action, right? And therefore, L'chein yesh tzivoy lekol echad ve'echad letor livchon es machshava divrei ma'aser shelo. Therefore, Yehoshua was commanded to send spies, unlike Moshe. Why? Because you can't command someone to do something they can't do, right? But since you can conquer your garments, therefore you can be commanded to conquer your garments because you have. And the idea of sending spies is really not to conquer them even yet. It's to check out what needs to be conquered. So you have to basically spy out your thoughts. What am I thinking? Who am I thinking about? Why? What am I saying? I have to just take a look at it first, like take a spy to see how this conquest is going to go. I'm going to take all these things back into Kedusha.
Why was that not relevant to Moshe?
We're going to soon see. But to the wise, you can deduce it on your own. And you are wise. But we're going to get to it soon. We're going to spell it out. But when it comes to Yehoshua, which is his Yerecha, which is the thought, speech, and action, since they're under your control, you are commanded to go spy them out. Masha'en kein amido shebelev. You want to take a guess before we get there? Again, I'm about to say it.
Guess about what?
Why was Moshe not under a command?
Is it because when they were at they already had sort of like perfected their state in the clouds of glory?
Masha'en kein amido shebelev. When it comes to the midos, which is compared to the 7 nations of Canaan, ein amrushuso. They're not under your control. Shel kol adam, unless you're a tzaddik, right? Or a heavy-duty Beinani, right? You do not have the control whether to suddenly get up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, right? And like you're suddenly struck with like melancholy or depression. Many times these things are out of your control, or jealousy or stinginess. Sorry, you had a bad, bad seed. But it doesn't mean you're doomed because you can control your thought, speech, and action. In other words, the exhaust that comes out, you can basically color it to come out like smelling like roses, right? But it's roses coming out of a rotten wood, right? But you are in control from the period of exhaust and out. So you can be commanded, hey, don't let it come out bad. I understand inside it's bad, and I'm not commanding you to fix it. Because you can't. I made you like that. But you are commanded from the point of trajectory outside of you, and therefore I'm commanding you to spy out the city of Yerecho. You following? So only tzaddikim, libam b'reshusam. Only by tzaddikim they have control of their heart. In other words, they can decide like, no, I'm not stingy. And just like change their actual midah because they have control at that deeper level of their own sense of self. It's a very kind of amazing thing to think about. It reminds me actually of a story of the, just totally kind of random, but of the Tzemach Tzedek. It says one time he took like a lot of mashka at a Farbrengen to the point that like it was too much. He drank like a couple cups of mashka in a row, and then all of a sudden he like had to say a mimer, and he just like went like this or something. I forget the exact story, and he was just like focused completely 100%, like it never happened, because he had control of himself. You know what I'm saying? Like in other words, he had control of his midos, he had control of everything. There's another story like that from the Frierdiker Rebbe, that he was saying a mimer, and there was like someone talking in the back. So he continued to say the mimer, and later on, they realized that he was like deaf in one ear. And it's like, what? And they were like, what happened? He's like, he's basically it's like, yeah, but that happened. I just like turned off the hearing in my left ear, and I just didn't turn it back on again. I forgot or something.
No way.
Yeah, there's a story. I think the Rebbe tells such a story. Yeah,
Wait, he just forgot to turn it back
I don't know if he forgot or like he had to reboot or something, but yeah,
He ended up getting back to work.
I think so. Yeah, I have to look up the story exactly, but these stories popped in my mind. They have total control not only of their midos, of their body, right, of their experience. Therefore, when it came to the spies that Moshe spent to spy out the whole land, which is essentially in our spiritual avoda, livchon es hamidos, which means to spy out your midos. In other words, look at yourself. Am I stingy? Am I grumpy? Right? All these different, you have to spy yourself out. Therefore, Hashem says, you send if you want. I'm not Hashem can't command you to go and take a look with the intent of conquering something which you have no ability to conquer, right? It's basically not in your possession to do. So if you want to go have a look at it, Moshe, feel free, but I can't command you to do such a thing because I can't give a command. There's this concept, HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo ba b'teruni al briosav. Hashem doesn't come with demands on his creations that are more than they can handle, which also is a lesson for any of us. No matter what you face in life, we should only face things that are good in an open and revealed way. But whatever you face in your life, there's a God. He knows your limitations, and he gives you only that which you can handle. Otherwise, it's like the game is not fair. And he tells you, I don't come with overburdening demands against my creations. Yeah.
Don't we have a promise, of course, to make when we come down here to the side?
So you're saying we have the ability to change our midos?
Yeah, or we're forced to have a burden on us that we can't.
I'm sorry. Well, the truth is that that's taken place in the neshama before it's in a goof. So I'm just thinking out loud. There's a few answers to this question. It's a question that's asked by many wise men as yourself. But one thing you could say is when the neshama makes that promise, it can keep it because it doesn't have yet the burdens of being in a body, right? In other words, once it comes to a body, you're not commanded to be a tzaddik, right? You
Promise to the presence. It's saying I will.
I know, but you're not in a position to. First of all, Hashem doesn't command you necessarily, but you're not in a position to per se do it. So, in other words, it's not. That's one answer, and the other answer is, as we learned before. Do you remember in the Maimer we learned about Pesach Sheni? We discussed this. Why is it that you make such an oath? First of all, there's a possibility that you could come to such a thing, right? Because if you become a Beinoni, a tzaddik can impregnate you, and you can fulfill the oath. But furthermore, we also said, and this is actually very, very important for our lives as Jews. I was just speaking to someone, for example, and he brought out he wanted to learn smicha because he wants to get married, but maybe he should get a job first and prepare himself that way by establishing himself like as a man of the world. So I told him basically this Rebbe's advice, like that he sort of shocked the world in the sense that he put young couples on shlichus without them knowing the language or anything to do with their place, and he encouraged people to get married before they had jobs, before they knew what they were doing in life. In other words, he sort of changed the normal organized seder of Yiddishkeit the way that it was, because having such a conception of being responsible and preparing your kli before you go out into the world seems like it makes a lot of sense. But the Rebbe started a generation on the premise of shtus to kedusha. We're just going to go wild for kedusha. We're gonna be crazy for God. And he actually lived it, and he made other people live it. Right? I want you to go to Germany and open up a Chabad of Munich. It's crazy. What are you talking about? Right? And so, what's the idea here is that the Rebbe was saying, I'm not just encouraging you to do the mitzvah in a more beautified way. In other words, really go after it and serve Hashem. He was saying, if you don't serve Hashem in a way of like kamikaze, like I'm all in under any circumstances, you won't really make it the other way. Because if you serve Hashem with your limited mind and your perspective, things that sort of make sense, we're in such a dark time right now that the forces of that are working against our own intelligence are so overwhelming, right? That they're going to like sort of outsmart your best plans. So by the time you know it, you're going to think, I'm going to get a job, and you're going to take it all into this place where you basically threw off Yiddishkeit because the burdens of making that job became so great you forgot your plan to begin with, right? It can happen. It can happen to you. So the point is, the Rebbe says, how do we defeat this? We have to defeat this by lachatchila being insane. We're not basing our moves based on what the world thinks is practical, or even what the Torah thinks is practical, like on sort of level one. We're going to like a deeper place in Torah, where the Torah is the only thing that exists, and I'm gonna follow it in some kind of like a wild way. And so you have to shoot for the stars to reach the moon. And this is the same idea. If you don't shoot for the stars, you're not going to reach the moon. If you shoot for the moon, you're not going to get to the moon. If you shoot for the stars, you're going to get to the moon. You must shoot for the stars. And this is the same thing here. They make you swear to be a tzaddik because there's no other way to become a Beinoni. If you want to actually get to where you want to go, you better be trying to do something that you can't do. But that itself is a requirement. In other words, to put yourself into such a level.
So isn't that going against what we just said, that Hashem doesn't put a burden on us that we can't do?
Again, when you say a burden, I say that we're talking about a tzivoy, a commandment from God. There is no commandment for God for you to be a tzaddik, right? There's like a promise that you're going to take upon yourself. And I'm telling you, why do you have to take upon yourself such a promise? So that you can fulfill the things that you are commanded to do. Right? You know, it's like saying, I'm going to be the best. We lost our chess player here, but I had I had a whole Rolodex of chess metaphors. Don't worry, he'll be back. But if you're going to be a contender, you have to want to be the champion, right? You really do. You really do. If you say like, I'll be fifth, you're going to be 20th, right? Or not even contend. So and again, this is something that takes place before we're even in the body facing the challenge, right? The neshama cannot understand what it's going to be like inside of a goof, right? When it's in the state of a neshama. We know this from the fact that the angels, right? We're like, why are these men so frail and failing? Send us down there. We'll take care of business. And you remember what happened? The Nephilim, they came down. They were horrible, much worse than the men behaved, because they didn't take into account the reality of actually being in a body. So it's one thing before you're born, you can make all kinds of promises and oaths, but you're not obviously responsible for when you get to a situation where you're in a completely different scenario. However, because you made that oath, you're sworn to become a tzaddik. You're gonna go to the stars. And that's really what that does for you. It creates a longing to be much more than you can be. So again, I would say the difference is, obviously you always have very good questions. I'm trying to answer them to the best of my ability, but the difference is no one's commanding you to be a tzaddik. And when you get to the world, when you actually get born, on the contrary, right? You think you're a tzaddik, and the Tanya is telling you, don't worry, you're not a tzaddik. This is not for you to do. You don't have to, Moshe is not commanding you to spy out the rest of the land. That's not on you to do. We're going to soon see also in this mimer, there is another answer to the question that you asked, which is, why are we making an oath to do something we can't do? If you know the mimer well, maybe that's why you're asking this question. You know the answer that he gives in the end? Yeah? Yeah. What is it?
Is it because that eventually will be doing this of Shia Ferrari?
How? Okay, we're going to see. So there's a good answer in store waiting, but you have to wait till the end now. See, I got you for the next few days.
What's the term in the mind is that you don't take someone's promise seriously? Not they make a deal that we don't believe this person is actually serious when they make it.
It might be, yeah. Kanunya, maybe, I don't know. There's a few. There's a lot of words for trickery. Okay, so anyway, what are we seeing here? That Moshe was not, Hashem was not commanding them, right? Ki avoda de kibush midos, because that service of conquering your actual midos b'shlemos, he puts in parentheses, in whole, in full, is dafka al yedei giloy bechinas Moshe. You can, so you say, why did Moshe send them in the first place, right? Hashem didn't command it, but Moshe did. What was Moshe thinking? Because if you have Moshe behind you, then you have the power to do it, right? But in other words, the Moshe in your soul, if you're imbued with the Moshe, which is like the Chochmeh Ilah, if you're like a tzaddik, right? Then you can go and conquer the midos as well. But since it's not for every man, Eino shav l'chol nefesh is not equal to every person. Therefore, Hashem says, "I'm not commanding you." Right? Some people can do it if you're Moshe, if you have the power of Moshe behind you, but if not, not. Gimel.
So why is Yehoshua not a tzaddik?
Yehoshua is a tzaddik, but
Why
he.
did Moshe command him?
What's that?
So why did Hashem command him?
He didn't. He commanded him only to send to Yerecho, to the garments. He didn't command him to spy out the whole land.
That's the difference that we're saying.
That's the difference. One of the two differences that we're saying. One was he sent him only to Yerecho, and one is that he sent him with a command. Yeah, let's just do a little recap, right? One is that he sent him to Yerecho only, and one is he sent him with a command. Those two things are totally bound up with each other. Yerecho is, now in spiritual terms, that's he sent him to conquer the thought, speech, and action. And for that you can command, because that's in your power to do something about. Moshe sent to all the lands, which is a deeper level of yourself, which is your midos. And for that, it's not in your power to conquer based on your own free will. And therefore, Hashem said, I can't command you to go and change your midos, because that's not something which is in your control to do. So Moshe did not get the command. Yehoshua did get the command. You get it? All right, we're going to hold here. Well done, gentlemen.
Rabbi, actually, I remember the answer.
What's the answer?
So,